Good afternoon. I'm Frank Louie. I'll be your moderator for today's session. Welcome to this webinar sponsored by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation, Business Licensing and Compliance Assistance Program, also known as BLC. BLC programming is designed to assist social equity applicants in Los Angeles in obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. This installment of our 2025 webinar series focuses on California's state equity overview. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed only on DCR's learning management system after the editing process. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all the panelists. There's an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on today's topic. Please ask questions about today's subject matter in the Q&A box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentations, and we'll have a Q&A session where you will also get responses in the last portion of today's event. You are encouraged to utilize the Q&A box at the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. If you use the Q&A box for questions, everyone will be able to see the questions when they are answered. Finally, please note that today's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. This information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code nor constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of today's topic, please call 213-978-0738 during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. to speak to a DCR representative. And now I'd like to introduce you to our guest presenter today, Robert Claiborne. Robert Claiborne is a manager in the Equity and Inclusion Division at the Department of Cannabis Control. He is a UCLA graduate with degrees in political science and philosophy. His experience as a medical cannabis cultivator and regulatory compliance consultant has given him the opportunity to work with many small and large cannabis businesses. He is happy to help people understand the complex nature of social equity in the regulated cannabis industry. Now I'd like to ask Robert to join me on screen. Hello, Robert. Welcome. Feel free to start
Hello,
sharing your
Frank.
screen and your presentation. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, everybody. Thank you, DCR, for hosting the event. Thank you, Frank, for moderating. I wanted to start with just a brief introduction. My name is Robert Claiborne. I am a staff services manager with the Department of Cannabis Control. That is my email on the screen there, and I welcome anyone to send me a message if you have questions or feedback about equity and the DCC. Even if it's not related to equity, you can email me and I can redirect your email to the proper team, give you instructions on how to speak with whoever you need to speak with. I've been asked to provide a state equity overview of the cannabis industry from DCC's perspective, and I'm happy to do so. I have a lot of conversations with applicants, licensees, other equity stakeholders, and over time, there have been a lot of similar questions or similar misunderstandings about what the DCC does, what the DCC doesn't do, what equity is. And hopefully, I can answer those questions. And by the end of this presentation, everyone will have a more complete view of what equity looks like in California. And importantly, for cannabis business owners, what programs are available at a state level and how to best take advantage of some of these opportunities. So to start, I joined the Department of Cannabis Control 3.5 years ago. I really appreciate the work that the DCC does to assist equity businesses. Um, this was my first job with the state, and I wasn't really planning on joining state service. I started um, my time in the cannabis industry as a cultivator right after college. I have spent 15 years in the cannabis industry. I've owned a business. But the reason why I eventually decided to join the DCC was because I saw that being a part of a team um, that actually helps equity businesses is what California needs to create a more equitable cannabis industry. So that's kind of why I'm here today. I want to give you a little perspective on where we're coming from. Um, and like I said, I was in the industry since graduating from college. Um, I was a small medical cultivator and worked directly with dispensaries, uh, directly with patients back in the Prop 215 days. I saw firsthand the benefits that cannabis can bring to patients, to people, um, and I kind of understand why a lot of entrepreneurs get into the cannabis industry. It isn't just about making money or having a successful business. It's about the good that the plant can do, and I think ultimately people in this industry do want to do something good. Right before legalization, in 2018, I became a regulatory compliance consultant at a healthcare law firm here in Los Angeles. So I would spend a lot of time reading about regulations and explaining them to applicants, to licensees, from small businesses, from big businesses. I would help people get licensed. I did audits. I made sure people were compliant, did staff trainings. I wrote biographies for owners so that they could use them on their applications. Really, I got to know these businesses and got to know their perspectives. And because of that, I understand how difficult it can be to make everything work in this newly regulated industry. And so that's the perspective that I bring when talking about these issues, when helping people navigate the complexities of the regulations and of state programs. And it's also the perspective of the DCC. We want equity businesses to succeed, and we know how difficult it is out there to make things work. We're regulators. Our primary duty is licensing, compliance, enforcement, but we're also committed to making the industry more equitable in the ways we can. And uh, based on those 5 values on that first slide, we really are committed to integrity, fairness, innovation, knowledge, collaboration, and support. And I hope that comes across. So, first of all, what is cannabis equity? Cannabis equity is all about creating opportunities for individuals and communities negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. The governor of the state of California and the DCC are committed to creating additional opportunities for individuals and communities that have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. And what does creating opportunities mean? It means financial support for cannabis businesses. It means technical assistance support. It means making the cannabis industry more accessible to people that have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. It doesn't just mean financial support, though. It means things like the expungement of conviction records. It means community reinvestment grants. It means uh, working with jurisdictions to make sure that they prioritize equity as well. And we'll get into all of those things later in the presentation. And cannabis equity is also about creating a just and diverse cannabis industry. And here it is uh, a little important and a little complicated. But I think we really need to frame what we mean when we talk about a just and diverse industry. Because cannabis equity, social and economic equity, racial equity, in some ways these overlap, and in some way they are distinct. So being clear about what we mean, especially given some of the limitations that the DCC has due to Prop 209, uh, Prop 209 limits how race can really be used in decision making. That can impact how cannabis equity policies are implemented on a state level. So we have tools to create a just cannabis industry here in California. Our tools to create a diverse cannabis industry are a little bit more limited. not just because of systemic issues, but because of the makeup of the cannabis industry itself. And with that in mind, this is a kind of a common picture that explains the difference between equality and equity. But I think uh, with that explanation of how cannabis equity works, I think it makes maybe a little bit more sense. Equity is about providing people an opportunity to succeed, and it's no guarantee of success. And this is kind of something that we here in the department have been focusing on a lot lately. We want people's expectations of what cannabis equity means and what it can result in for them. Um, it's not it's not just going to be enough to rely on state support to have a successful business. We want to support your business, especially smaller equity businesses that run by people that have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. But state support and really local jurisdiction support as well is just one small part of making your business a success. This is really all about providing opportunities and providing support in any way that we can. Limited, of course, by funding and the law and all that. So this work is ongoing. The DCC has continued to devote time, energy, and resources to support local jurisdictions improving outcomes for equity applicants. And part of that is through the creation of a division of equity and inclusion, which I'm a part of. I'm a manager in the division of equity and inclusion. And we specifically focus on this issue so that we can learn how to support applicants and licensees in the industry. And so I hope to provide a little bit of a division overview so people can understand what the Division of Equity and Inclusion does before we go into the very specific details about the programs that are available for you, how they can save you money or give you technical assistance. I think really having an understanding of who we are as a division and what we do in that division helps to put it all into context. So here are some of the projects that we've been working on in the Division of Equity and Inclusion. And a lot of our focus in this division is on reducing barriers to entry. It's on program efficiency. It's on, making sure that you get licensed in time. It's on encouraging those outcomes that are more equitable for the entire industry. So one of those things, and one of the things that we are working very hard on right now, is business owner interviews. These interviews are with applicants and licensees throughout California. We want to hear from anybody that is interested in talking to the DCC about their feedback, what they're struggling with, what's been a success. We collect all of this information. We share it among the department. We make sure that these voices are prioritized, that they're listened to, that we have kind of a full understanding of where equity businesses are coming from when they are trying to make it in this industry. When you talk to us, we make sure that what you say gets in the ears of all the leadership in this department. So I'm going to have more on this later, but part of the reason why I'm here is to encourage anybody in the social equity program here in Los Angeles to reach out to the DCC, reach out to me, send an email. We can set you up with an interview. We can hear what you have to say, and we'll go from there. The next project we work on as well is compliance investigations. That means that we tag along with our compliance division when they go out to equity businesses. So we can help the compliance team really understand what equity businesses are, understand the equity business perspective. We also educate employees and owners when we go on these visits about programs that are available, about what they can do to save money by signing up for these programs. And I found that it's really been a useful way to speak face to face with business owners and help them understand how equity works on a state level. The next thing we do, fee relief technical assistance. We'll get more into the fee relief program, which is one of the biggest programs DCC is responsible for. Equity programs on a state level. It's where your state license fee can be waived or deferred based on your qualification as an equity business. But this program, we get a lot of questions about this program. I get a lot of emails about this program, how to complete the forms, where to send the forms. And if you send me an email with questions about this program, I can put you in contact with who you need to talk to. I can walk you through the steps needed to complete your fee relief application. And that's part of what we do as a division. The next thing is jurisdiction technical assistance. This just means that we work with local jurisdictions, especially newer jurisdictions, to help surface best practices, assist with implementation of their equity program. We've worked closely with LA County in developing their equity program. San Diego just sent me an email asking about their licensing process and how it relates to their equity program. So we look forward to working with jurisdictions. If they're ever struggling with any issue, they can reach out to us as well. So it's not just applicants and licensees that can reach out to us if they have any questions. We also encourage local jurisdictions to reach out to us so that we can help make the industry a little more equitable. We're also working on equity licensing data integration. This just means that we are taking equity data related to who is or isn't an equity business and adding it to the licensing system so that when we look up a license, we can see who is equity. We use this information to help assist equity businesses in targeted ways. We use it to find equity retailers and put that on our website so that customers interested in buying from equity businesses can find that information on our website. And we've also heard from stakeholders how this data might eventually be used to help them argue for or against specific equity policies. If they see an equity business sales data or aggregated sales data for equity businesses, they might be able to take that information and present it to legislators in a compelling way. We also work on bill analysis. So we work with every division in the department, but this is the policy and research division that reaches out to us to get the perspective of equity businesses before they present their bill analysis to legislators. So those business owner interviews that I talked about, that feedback that we get from those, we can incorporate that into our bill analysis so that when we provide advice or analysis to legislators, they are hearing the perspective of equity businesses and how a piece of legislation might impact them. We do grant review. So this is related to grants that are distributed to local jurisdictions. We help ensure that they are being distributed efficiently. They are getting into the hands of equity applicants and licensees. That's also a part of what our division does. We go through spreadsheets and application forms just to make sure that funds are being distributed equitably. And one of the big projects that we have, and it's on the DCC website, which is cannabis.ca.gov, is the Equity Resources Hub. And I will go into this more in detail later in the presentation, but essentially it is a series of web pages that have in-depth information on all of these programs that I'm going to talk about today, in-depth information on how to apply for different programs, links to different sites on that explain in detail what this program is and how to take advantage of these programs as an equity business. So that is a big part of what we do, is maintaining that website. And a part of that Equity Resources Hub is a series of what we call promising practices, which is highlighting a policy throughout California, usually related to a local jurisdiction, and interviewing somebody that's been impacted by that policy. So we've interviewed business owners from Los Angeles. We've spotlighted their business on our website. We explain why the policy is good and why other local jurisdictions interested in implementing an equity program might look to this business owner and this specific policy as an example for why they should implement that policy in their jurisdiction. And finally, we have office hours. This is an upcoming project we're about to implement, but we are looking forward to hosting weekly office hours in the Equity and Inclusion Division where licensees, other equity stakeholders can join in, ask questions related to an equity topic. I can put them in contact with people who they need to be put in contact with. And it's really just a way to put a face to cannabis regulation, especially in the equity space here at the DCC. So we're looking forward to implementing that. And eventually, if you're signed up for the DCC emails, eventually you'll see a notice of that and hope to see you there. So with all of these things that our division does, there's still sometimes some confusion about equity in the cannabis industry. Even equity businesses sometimes have trouble understanding some of the basics around equity. And one of the big sources of confusion we get, and we get this question a lot, is what exactly is an equity business? So California actually has a statewide equity definition. It kind of classifies what counts as an equity business, what doesn't count as an equity business. And there are two criteria for equity businesses. It's simple, but it's also a little, so I'll go into. The first is local jurisdiction equity program participation. That means if you are a part of the social equity program with the DCR, then the DCC counts you as an equity business. That's everybody here is considered an equity business essentially if they're a part of that social equity program. The other criteria for an equity business is statewide fee relief qualification. So if you've applied for a fee waiver or fee deferral from the DCC, that those programs we'll go into a little bit later. If you qualify for those programs, then you are counted as an equity business, and you'll be, if you're a retailer, you'll be listed in the license search feature so customers can find you and see that you're an equity business. But that's really what it boils down to, those two things. But there are also some nuances to the DCC criteria, that statewide fee relief qualification criteria, that make this a little bit more complicated. Those three criteria relate to cannabis conviction or arrest. So if you've been arrested or convicted for a cannabis related offense, usually that will qualify you as part of the DCC statewide definition. If your household income is at a certain level, that'll also potentially qualify you. And then there's a big residency requirement that's a little complicated. I won't go into detail about it here, but it is listed on our Equity Resources Hub if you want to see if you qualify under those conditions. So this kind of is what equity looks like in the state. Equity is a collaboration between local jurisdictions who set their own criteria and the state, which has its own criteria. But if you meet either one of those criteria, either the local jurisdiction or the state, according to the DCC, you are an equity business. And so moving on, even though this is a little complicated, I'll try to simplify it a little bit, but this is how equity in California works. There are kind of a basic set of statewide equity efforts, and they boil down to these categories. Financial support. So these are grants, these are fee relief, license fees, statewide license fees can be waived or deferred according to the DCC's fee relief program. And there are also tax credits, and the tax credit program is where things get a little confusing. But those are really the three pillars of financial support from the state when it comes to equity. There's also technical assistance. So this includes the Equity Resources Hub that I mentioned earlier, but it also includes an email where anybody can write into the DCC. We can connect you to the department where your question relates to the most, and we can get you an answer as quick as possible. So you can go to that Equity Resources Hub, and I'll explain how to get to that later in the presentation, or you can just email that email address you see on the screen, info@cannabis.ca.gov, and somebody from there will either answer your question or redirect you to the division that can answer your question. And then finally, there's one more thing that the state does, not just financial support, not just technical assistance, but education and outreach. This is kind of what the business owner interviews are all about. It's what gathering feedback from licensees and applicants is all about. The DCC wants to hear from equity businesses in California. We want to understand what they're going through. We want to understand their challenges. We want to understand the success stories. If you talk to us, there's a better chance that we're able to incorporate your stories into how we approach cannabis equity on a state level. And paired with that education and outreach, we've also done a lot about conviction expungement. This was a big deal earlier in the recreational legalization process, but we want to connect with people that have had cannabis convictions, arrests, and let them know that there are resources available for them to help them kind of break down those barriers to entry into the cannabis industry and to others. So, cannabis equity in California isn't just the role of the DCC. You can see here that there are 4 different categories, and I'll try to go through these categories in as simple way as possible so that it kind of makes sense what the DCC does, and importantly, what the DCC doesn't do. So we'll start with the DCC, which regulates cannabis licensure in the state of California. DCC is the result of the consolidation of the 3 previous licensing and regulatory programs within the state. And really, we want to streamline and simplify the process of obtaining a license, regulatory oversight. Kind of the key element to what the DCC does. I think if you have to think of it in as simple of terms as possible, it's just licensing, compliance, enforcement. There's these add-ons about grant distribution in some way, but those are the main roles of the DCC. The legislature, which I'll talk about next, is responsible for allocating resources and determining priorities. So the DCC doesn't allocate resources to specific programs. We don't determine what we're going to focus on. That is the role of the legislature. So funding for any statewide program comes from the legislature. If a program doesn't have funding, or if it doesn't exist, it's not because the DCC doesn't want it to exist, which a lot of people think and comes up a lot when I have conversations with people, but it's because the program either hasn't been created or it hasn't been funded by the legislature. Next, we'll talk about local jurisdictions, which I think everybody here is familiar with. Local jurisdictions are responsible for implementing equity programs. DCR's social equity program is a great example. Like we mentioned earlier, this means that they create standards that set, who can count as an equity business. Because of the way that Prop 64 was written, local control of cannabis regulation is just a fact in California. So DCC may have a lot of power regarding licensing, compliance, and enforcement. But typically when a business is interacting with an equity policy, whether it's grants, loans, or fee waivers for anything other than state license fees, they're going to be interacting with their local jurisdiction. And lastly, we have 3 separate state departments that maybe not a lot of people are too familiar with. That's GOBIZ, the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development. There's the CDTFA, the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, and the FTB, the Franchise Tax Board. So these 3 state departments are responsible for a big chunk of equity programs in the state. GOBIZ especially is responsible for distributing money to local jurisdictions that then distribute that money to applicants and licensees. GOBIZ is also responsible for distributing money to communities in the form of community reinvestment grants. And we can go more into detail in this later too. The CDTFA has a program called vendor compensation that we'll go into detail later on that pretty much allows businesses to retain a percentage of the excise tax that they have to pay on retail sales. And then the Franchise Tax Board has a tax credit for equity businesses. So we'll explain how to qualify for these, when they expire, and just go into more detail on that later. But it's important to know that usually a program, if it's not related to fee relief, which is what the DCC does. If there's an equity program that's statewide, it's usually coming from another department, whether that's GoBiz, whether that's the CDTFA, or whether that's the F2B. I also want to talk a little more specifically about local jurisdictions and how important local jurisdictions are to cannabis equity before we go into detail on this program, just to give some context on what's going on here. So even though California has licensed regulated cannabis industry, there are still 56% of jurisdictions in the state that ban cannabis retailers. So this is not something the DCC has any control over. This is something that is based on a local jurisdiction decision, and it kind of emphasizes how much power local jurisdictions have regarding cannabis regulation that people interact with on a day-to-day basis. So of the 540 jurisdictions in California, only 22 jurisdictions, that cities and counties, have equity programs. Los Angeles is one of them. It's a great equity program that covers a lot of people, but that's only one of 22 jurisdictions in the entire state that has an equity program and is creating policies and programs to help assist equity businesses. There are 12 jurisdictions, though, with equity programs in development. Los Angeles County is one of them. They're we're trying to encourage more jurisdictions to create more equity programs so more people can be assisted, and so more of these opportunities can be created for these people. But it's a it's a slow process. As you can see, only 22 jurisdictions have programs, 12 are in development. So this is a kind of an uphill battle to make equity more of a focus in California. And this slide kind of breaks down that distinction between the DCC, those other departments, and the legislature a little more clearly. As you can see, the legislature writes laws, allocates resources, determines priorities. GoBiz, CDTFA, and FTB, they distribute grants to local jurisdictions. They distribute grants to community-based nonprofits, and they're responsible for those tax credits and vendor compensation. And the DCC, as you can see, licensing, compliance, enforcement, fee relief, technical assistance, outreach. Moving on, we will talk about policy categories, and here's where we will go into depth about the programs that equity applicants and licensees can qualify for, kind of the pillars of equity support in California, and exactly what what equity means on a basic department-wide level in the entire state. So first kind of pillar of equity support in California is support for business owners. So this is applicants and licensees that are looking to start a cannabis business. What does the state do for you? So as you can see, there are fee waivers and deferrals from the DCC. And I'll go into a little bit of detail with this here. It'll be a little complex, but again, there's that equity resources hub that can capture all of this information for you if you're a little lost. So firstly, fee waivers are a program that was created in 2022. There was $30 million allocated for fee waivers so that anybody that qualified as an equity business would have their state license fee waived. They wouldn't have to pay a state license fee. That money has since been exhausted. It was a popular program. Equity businesses signed up. They didn't have to pay license fees. But now that $30 million is no longer there, and there is no new funding to continue this program. That doesn't mean that the whole fee waiver process is completely over with. I'll go into more detail on that, but as part of that fee relief effort that the DCC does, there's the fee deferral program, which is still in existence, and we still encourage people, if they are having an issue paying for their license to sign up for a fee deferral. This is a 6-month deferral. You don't have to pay your license fee for 6 months, as you can, build up funds to pay that fee. Businesses with more than one license can request deferrals on each license within the same calendar year. And all deferrals must be paid no later than 6 months after the issuance of a license or the renewal of their license. Um, Fee deferrals are kind of a good way, especially for cultivators, to uh, wait until a harvest, or kind of wait until they have a little bit more cash to make that license fee payment. Part of that fee waiver and fee deferral program, what makes it so important is that next bullet point I'm going to talk about, the tax credits and tax rebates. In order to qualify for tax credits and tax rebates with the CDTFA and FTB, you also have to qualify for the Department of Cannabis Control's fee relief program. So with the CDTFA, their vendor compensation program, which lets you lower the excise tax essentially that you're paying on retail sales. If you want to qualify for that as a cannabis business retailer, you need to qualify for a fee waiver from the Department of Cannabis Control. Even though the funding for the fee waivers are exhausted, still in the regulations, there's that requirement that to qualify for vendor compensation, you need to qualify for a fee waiver. So we still encourage people, if they want that vendor compensation, to apply for a fee waiver with the DCC. You'll get approved in lieu of funds, even though you won't get money for that fee waiver. You'll be approved for the fee waiver so that you can take that qualification to the CDTFA and receive vendor compensation. A little complicated, a little complex. This is a lot of what the technical assistance I do on this fee waiver program relates to. And it's kind of a little bit of a hassle, but it's worth it because it saves businesses money on their taxes. The tax credit from the FTB is a little bit different from the vendor compensation. But the vendor compensation is only available to cannabis business retailers. The tax credit is available to every cannabis business, so long as you're an equity business. And whereas the vendor compensation requires fee waiver qualification, the tax credit requires any fee relief qualification. So you can qualify for a fee waiver, you can qualify for a fee deferral, and you'll qualify for this tax credit through the FTB. And also, the last thing on that bullet point is licensing support. The DCC also offers licensing support to individuals that are having trouble completing their state license application. You can email us at that info@cannabis.ca.gov email, and we will support you filling out your license application or completing your license application. The other pillar of support is support to local jurisdictions. This is simply it's kind of the big way that the state government distributes money to equity businesses. The state doesn't distribute directly. What we do is we distribute to local jurisdictions, and local jurisdictions distribute that money to equity businesses. So the Governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, their Cannabis Equity Grants Program is the main program that is sending money to jurisdictions so that they can send it to cannabis businesses. 80% of the money that GoBiz gives to a local jurisdiction has to be used by that local jurisdiction in the form of grants or loans to equity businesses. The DCC has two other programs, local jurisdiction assistance grants and the retail access grants. Those give money to jurisdictions so that they can either help businesses get their annual license, or so that those jurisdictions can expand retail access, kind of allowing retail sales in jurisdictions that don't already allow it. And the last pillar of equity support in the state is support to communities. Or I shouldn't say this is the last pillar, there's still one more after this, but support to communities in the form of California Community Reinvestment Grants. These are grants to nonprofits and local health departments that, especially those that have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. A big effort in the state is sending cannabis tax revenue to these programs. And the last pillar, of course, support to individuals. And this mainly comes in the form of helping people get their records expunged. To kind of get an idea of the impact of these programs, I thought it would be interesting to see where the money has gone for cannabis equity on a state level. So far, California has allocated about $500 million on cannabis equity. This includes community reinvestment grants, vendor compensation, fee relief, all of the programs that assist equity businesses. It's amounted to about $500 million since recreational legalization. In the past year, cannabis businesses have paid over $1 billion in taxes. And during that same time, equity businesses, so reducing their taxes, they've received about $4.5 million in vendor compensation. So a little, that's one of the programs run by the CDTFA, $1 billion in cannabis taxes, $4.5 million reduced in taxes by equity businesses. And then for the tax credit program in 2023, which was the first year of the tax credit program, equity businesses saved $81,000 on their taxes. And so, as an equity business, as an applicant or licensee, you might be asking, what does this mean for me? I think this is where, as a division, we are most interested in connecting with applicants and licensees so that we can explain um, how these programs work, where the money's going, how you can take advantage of certain opportunities that are out there on a state level. And now we will finally talk about our Equity Resources Hub, how to access it, what information is available there. Let me go through this a little quickly. So all information on statewide cannabis equity programs is available on this website. Um, Technical assistance about accessing these programs is also available at this resource hub, and it's that email that I have mentioned a few times, info@cannabis.ca.gov. You reach out to that email, and somebody from the department will connect you to the right person to help you answer any question that you have. And importantly, we want equity stakeholders to be aware of these programs. This isn't hidden on the website. This information is out there. We want people to know that there's a vendor compensation program. We want people to know that qualifying for a fee waiver is necessary to qualify for vendor compensation. We want people to know that tax credits are available. Not, it's surprising when I go on compliance investigations with compliance and I talk to cannabis business owners that have been in the business for 3-4 years. I mentioned the vendor compensation program, and this is the first time they're hearing about it. And they could have been saving thousands and thousands of dollars on their taxes for years, but they hadn't checked out the Equity Resources Hub, or they weren't aware of this program. So we want more people to be aware of these programs. And so how might you access the Equity Resources Hub? Well, first you have to go to the department's website. That's cannabis.ca.gov. You can see on the top there, there's a resources tab. If you click on that resources tab, a drop down will come down, and you can see cannabis equity there. If you click on that, it'll lead you to this website, which is the cannabis resources page. On the left side of the screen, you can see a link that says Explore Cannabis Equity Resources. You click on that, and it'll take you to this page where you can see all the different resources we have available for equity applicants, licensees, and local jurisdictions. If you click on the link that says California State and Local Jurisdiction Equity Program, right there, it'll take you here. And that's where you can learn about fee relief. That's where you can learn about the vendor compensation program. And that's where you can learn about the Franchise Tax Board's Cannabis Equity Tax Credit, which is a $10,000 tax credit, by the way. And so these three important state programs that can help save applicants and licensees money, unfortunately, they are expiring. And like I already said, the $30 million for the fee waiver program has already been exhausted. Fee deferrals, though, are still available. And remember, qualifying for a fee waiver or deferral is a requirement for those other programs. The vendor compensation program with the CDTFA expires this year at the end of the year. So this is the last year, unless it's renewed by the state legislature. It's the last year this program is in effect. The cannabis equity tax credit program expires in 2 years at the end of 2027. So that program's still available. You can still save $10,000 in taxes every year through this program, but that program will also expire and will only be renewed with an effort from the state legislature. And so, how might applicants and licensees that care about cannabis equity, that want to continue to receive these opportunities, to continue to receive the benefits of these programs, how might they make their voice heard and ensure that these programs exist for them in the future? First, I'll say it again. We want you to participate in our business owner interviews with the Equity and Inclusion Division. Please contact me. Please contact the department, and they can put you into contact with us. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear what you care about. We want to hear what you're challenged by, successes, everything. Just please get into contact with us, and we can take your feedback and incorporate it into the work that we do every day. You can also connect with other equity stakeholders. It's I think when equity businesses talk to one another about the issues that they need to address in the industry, they can be a lot more impactful. They can have more of an impact on the Department of Cannabis Control. They can have a lot more impact on policy throughout the state. And I think that's one of the takeaways we've gotten from talking to a lot of these businesses, is that working together really can bear fruit for equity businesses. And lastly, contacting your state and local representative. Um, like I was explaining, there are things the DCC can do, and there are things the DCC can't do. The DCC does not set the agenda for equity in the state of California. That's set by state and local representatives. And if you care about the agenda of equity in the state of California, that's who you should contact. And that has been my state equity overview. I hope it's been helpful for people at this presentation. I think I covered a lot of the programs that we deal with on a daily basis here. And if there are any questions, I'm open to hearing some. I think Frank might come back on and try and read some, but thank you very much for listening to the presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Robert. Lots of good information, refresher and updates for a lot of us, and always valuable to get the latest initiatives that are going on. We do have a couple questions. I'm going to ask this first one that came in from one of the participants, and not sure if it's in your wheelhouse or not, but obviously a good question. A state-run bank that could give, this is from Sunshine who submitted this, a state-run bank that could give equity business loans would be nice. Is that something that the department is exploring and supporting within the government?
This has been something we've
Yeah.
talked about in the department. It is, again, DCC is limited by what the law says. So it's something we've talked about. It's something that we are interested in. We've looked at other states that do something similar, statewide support. It's not there's no piece of legislation authorizing a state bank, but it's something we have talked about, and we're looking forward to seeing where the conversation goes.
Yeah. Well, as we know, it's bigger, it's much bigger and broader than social equity issues and challenges, but the lack of banking is still a massive barrier and challenge in the industry. Maybe it's something we can collaborate and figure out how to make some progress there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there are examples
Yep.
about some jurisdictions in California that have, as part of their equity program, they give like a credit to like a membership to a credit union so that
Yeah,
cannabis businesses can bank at that credit union in
yeah,
Humboldt County or something like that. Yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm
there's a lot
familiar
of
with a couple of
possible
those. Maybe we
solutions.
can brainstorm to see which ones are appropriate to communicate, right? I know there's always some caution in who to refer, right?
Yeah.
We can talk about that in a future discussion. And then Lewis had submitted a question as well. Will the CDTFA vendor compensation be extended? And how can they advocate for that extension? Obviously, it was a valuable offering, right?
Yeah, it's huge for some businesses. It's there's no plans to extend the program as of yet. The only way to extend the program is through the state legislature,
Yeah,
and they're your representatives. If people care about equity, then it has to be something that you talk about with your state representative, so that programs like that can continue to exist.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a great reinforcement. You mentioned it during the presentation, is that um, it's not the DCC, it's not you, right? It's the legislative process, and people need to get involved to participate, right? Or support those that are leading those efforts with the legislators, right?
Yeah, and
Um,
there are many groups
yes.
throughout California that get business owners and interested stakeholders together to help that. So we would recommend looking into those groups and becoming a member if that works for you.
Yep. Agree. And then there was a lot of general questions that were proposed, and I'm going to go through several of these. I think they're good to clarify. First one, if there's no funding for fee waivers, should I even bother applying?
Yeah, this is a question that we do get a lot. Um, why bother applying? I think I made it a little clear with the
Hmm.
importance of vendor compensation and the tax credit. Even without fee waivers, you still apply for a fee waiver and you can qualify for these programs. But on top of that, when you do apply for these programs, it puts you, it marks you as equity in the department's, system so that we can better target resources to divisions with a lot of equity businesses. We can, flag you as a equity retailer on the department's search function. So we want people to um, apply for these programs so that we have information about them as an equity business and that they can also take advantage of these programs.
Hmm. Yeah, and then this question, I didn't apply for a fee relief in the past. Can I qualify retroactively to get money from vendor compensation or tax credits?
Yeah, but unfortunately, that is not possible.
Yeah,
It's why we wish more people, and it's why we want to make people aware of this
yeah,
program, and especially in the future if it does get renewed. This isn't something that you can, if you learn about it 3 years after the fact,
yeah.
there's no catching back up. It's something you have to know from the beginning. So that's why I'm here, so people can be made aware of these programs.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Improving the communication and people seeking out information. I mean, it's got to be a proactive initiative, right? This,
Yeah,
yeah. Like you said, if you heard it and learned about it today, you've kind of missed the window, right?
yeah.
So encourage everyone to
Well, the
engage.
tax credit's still around for 2 more years.
Tax
So
credit, yeah,
if you learned about it today, you can still save about 20 grand on your taxes there.
yeah, yeah. And if I don't have a state license yet, can I still qualify for some of these initiatives or fee relief and things like that?
Yeah. So that's if you want to qualify for vendor compensation or that tax credit and you're just now getting licensed, when you apply for your license with the state, you can apply for fee relief, a fee waiver, fee deferral. And when you qualify for that, you can submit that qualification to the CDTFA and FTB for those programs. So even if you don't have a state license yet, there's a box to check in your state application that will let you participate in these programs so that you can take advantage of them.
Great. And then, I think you reinforced this, but let me ask the question so we can just review it. If I have more questions about fee relief or any of the initiatives and programs, who can I talk to at the DCC?
Yeah, again, my email's right there. on the screen my name, robert.claiborne@cannabis.ca.gov, or you can email info@cannabis.ca.gov. Either one of those emails, I'll get you in touch with who you need to. They'll redirect you to whoever you need to. Please just don't be afraid to email the department. We want to help equity businesses get in touch with who they need to get in touch with.
Yeah, I know I know you participate and you're active in the community and, trying to be as visible as possible. So, I mean, we appreciate that and value your efforts there. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, I want to thank you again, Robert, for your participation. It's always great to work with you in the department to keep the community informed. This informative webinar offered by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation. This webinar recording will be found on DCR's Learning Management System. If you have any questions on accessing your account, please email dcr.sep@lacity.org. Thank you again for joining us and have a wonderful day.